Welcome back to the table. Today, Emily and I are going to talk to you about playing board games, but not at the table.
What?
Yeah, you can do that. If you watch the channel, you're probably familiar with BGA or Board Game Arena, but we think it's long overdue that we sit here and talk about some of our favorite games to play, and more importantly, some of the more recent games to play on Board Game Arena. They've just recently announced that in the month of December, they're going to be dropping a new game every day.
Every single day.
Which is crazy. So if you're not on Board Game Arena, you should really get on there and check it out. But they're going to have a new game, and in the spirit of that, we thought, well, let's talk about why we play board games in structuring it around 6 games that you should be playing, or we think that you should be playing on Board Game Arena. I'm going to start.
Okay.
And these are some recent ones and some older ones. But the first one I want to talk about is Far Away. If you've watched the channel, we've done a Just Played on Far Away, and it's one of my favorite games this year. This is a simple tableau builder, but one of the thinkiest tableau builders I've played. You're only building a tableau of 8 cards. Everyone's doing it mostly simultaneously. Once that's over, you're going to score in reverse order. And you flip over all the cards except for the last card, and then you flip them over as you score them. So a lot of the cards have scoring mechanics on them.
Yes.
All those cards require certain tags or icons to be visible in your tableau to score them. So it gets to be tricky where you're like, okay, I want icons on my later cards so that my earlier cards score.
Could benefit from it.
But as you're playing it, it's so hard and thinky to try to wrap your head around that. Mixed with the fact that it's such a simple game to teach and play. Like, here's the cards, you play one. Okay, now you do this. And then there's some drafting involved.
I think what Far Away does really well is that it is very puzzly, right? Even when you're like, okay, I get it now, I understand what's going to happen. Then you do something and you're like, oh, shoot, I forgot that's what's going to happen. And so just when you think you got it, you forget something, and then that one's not going to score. But luckily, you still get a lot of scoring, and you still get a lot going on. So it's very puzzly, but it's not so punishing that you end the game and you're like, and I got 2 points because nothing worked.
No, yeah, you can usually get something together, but scores are going to vary depending on the game. And the good thing about playing it on BGA is that you can always find a game. And this is a great game to play and play a few times to get some games under your belt so that you kind of have a better understanding of, okay, now I understand this. So the next time you do get it to the actual table, maybe you can play it a little bit better.
It's the epitome of the game you play and you're like, okay, now I get it. Let's play again.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
on BGA, you can do that. You can literally just say play now and you play right again.
So what's your first game?
My first one is the most recent one that I've been playing, which is Let's Catch That Lion.
Oh, yeah, I played the tutorial of this.
It's fun. It's cute. It's a little like children's version of shogi, which is like Japanese chess. But so it's another puzzle game. You have only 4 pieces and your opponent has 4 pieces. All you're trying to do is get your lion to their side of the board or capture their lion. Pretty easy enough. Each of the pieces say how that they move. The cool thing is when you capture one of their pieces, it becomes yours.
Yeah.
And now you can put it on the board on your side. However, it's a lot of little thinking. It's such a small board and there's such small movements that you're like, I was in a spot against Brian where I was like, ooh, I have more pieces, I'm doing really well. But then I didn't even realize that I had quartered my lion in, and so there was only one place he could move, and Brian very easily got me into a spot where I was basically checkmated, right? And I was like, oh shoot, I did this to myself.
Yeah, even after just playing through the tutorial, and by the way, we've mentioned this recently on Chit Chat, the tutorial system on BGA is fantastic. I wasn't even aware of that until probably this last month. And now I'll just get on BGA and I'll oh, what's this new game? Oh, there's a tutorial. And you don't really play through it, but it basically shows you the game being played with little call-out boxes telling you, here's what you're doing. This is what you would do next. Here are your options when you do this. And a lot of those, I think, are done by different users and different people. But some of them are done really, really well. It's a great way to learn the game. And after I did the tutorial for this game, I want to own this game for the table because this game feels to me like it's not like Quarto, but it's going to give you the same sort of nice, simple little abstract experience that a Quarto does. It squarely feels like it belongs between tic-tac-toe and chess.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
It's like if chess and tic-tac-toe, even though it's not mechanically like tic-tac-toe, but
it's just because it's such a small grid that you think
yeah.
of it that it becomes that accessible, but it is the strategy of chess.
Yeah,
where
exactly.
You're like, where I move really matters. And so what do I have to do? But it's only a 6-minute game, right?
Yeah.
Like we played it so fast and it's so easy to do that. And that's what I like about the tutorials too, is that you can just learn a new game and then you're like, Brian was like, you've never played it? I was like, no, but I know it now, so don't worry, we'll just start.
Plus, short little games like that on BGA are great because you are often playing on BGA with people who you don't live near. They're
Yes.
across the country. And sometimes if you like text one of your friends from across the country and say, hey, you want to play a game of Ark Nova? They're like, ugh. I don't think so. But anyone can jump on really quick on their phone
Yes.
and get a 5-minute game of this done.
Yes.
So it's great that they have a lot of and they have a ton of games like that. My next one isn't quite like that. It is a small game and it is a much newer game. In fact, it's not even out here in the States for the table, but I do want to get it. It's called Perfect Words.
Oh.
And this is a unique game. It's in the vein of, if you like games like Just One or So Clover, code names, things like that. This is probably a ratchet above those. It feels slightly less like a party game. I don't know that there's going to be as much laughs at the table, but it is a really interesting thinky game because there's this bank of words that you choose from and you put the words down one player after the other. It is cooperative, I should say that. You put a word out and you're building effectively what looks like a crossword puzzle shape, but out of words, not letters. So when I put a word down, as soon as someone puts a word either adjacent to that, above or below or side to side, and you have two cards next to each other, then they have to add a number card next to that. So that becomes like the first word that we're all going to have to guess. So if there's a word down there that says like king, and then someone puts fish next to that, and then they put the number, then everyone at the table has to think that at the end of the game, everyone's going to write down what they think word one is. So king and fish could be shark. Who knows? And while you're playing, someone might even add a third word to that that solidifies, hopefully, what everyone was thinking.
Gotcha.
Or someone might put banana. And now all of a sudden someone's like, what? Like,
Kingfish banana?
What are you thinking of? Because I was thinking, and there's no table talk. You're all doing this. So you do this until there's 10 words sort of in that crossword shape. And then everyone on a card or on BGA on the screen just writes down their words. And you get points for matching. So if you're playing a 5-player game, you'll get more points the more people that match on every word. So it's just one of those games where you are just trying to attain a high score. It reports your score at the end and says, you're great.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of like Connections, the New York Times app, where you're like, 100%. You get those words and you're trying to figure out how do they go together. But like as a group, you're trying to put something together and be like, these are how they go together without talking. Don't mess it up.
And I do think that's where the sort of party vibe can come into it, is that when someone does put down one of those words and like banana and everyone else at the table is like, what? And then they start questioning to themselves, like, wait a minute, am I the only one at the table who was thinking shark? Because is everyone else on board with banana shark here? So it's really interesting. And then also if someone solidifies things with a third word that's like, oh yeah, so that everyone now knows that. It's a really satisfying game.
Gotcha. My next one is one that I've really been enjoying playing lately, and that is Roll to the Top. So it just came onto BGA into full access, but I've really liked it. It's a roll and write, where all you have to do is you're rolling dice, and everyone gets to use those same dice, and you can take the dice and put them somewhere in your pyramid or whatever monument you're using, whatever shape. You start from the bottom, and you go up to the top, and you have to put higher numbers on the one below it. So it's pretty simple rules. It's nothing extravagant, but it's very fun because it's a race game where you're trying to see who can fill up most of theirs fastest, and you're using the dice that you come out. So each time you're doing it, you're getting to choose like dice that you're adding to the supply or taking out of the supply. And these are all different dice from like a D4 to a D20. So there's different probabilities of which numbers are coming out.
Oh.
And then sometimes you can add these numbers together too. So like if you start really low, you can add up to something really high at the end if you're adding like whatever comes from the D20 and whatever comes from the like D10. Or you can have numbers that are way too low that come out and you can't put them anywhere. And so you're watching your opponents get closer and closer to filling theirs up and you're like, dang it, I can't use a 2 anywhere. Now what am I supposed to do?
And it's just a race to the top?
It's just a race to the top to fill out your board. So
okay.
it usually ends up with people being pretty darn close to each other because you are using the same dice. But they can end up with very different boards, and they have different maps you can play as well. So there are some that I think the original one is just like a pyramid, right?
Yeah.
So it's like just a classic shape. But then there are ones that have like hanging structures and ones where like it goes up to 1 and then gets bigger. So you're thinking like, do I want to start low there? Or do I want to let it go high really fast? Or it's very cool. And I love how fast it is. I love how I can just go onto BGA on my phone and very easily click boom, boom, and that's my turn. And the games go very fast. I don't have to worry about it. It's not like a 2-month-long thing that I'm committing to.
Yeah, roll and writes actually work pretty well on BGA.
They work so well.
And again, they're kind of generally speaking a quicker game to play. So yeah, those work out. My next one is not a roll and write. It is a more complex game, and it is a classic that has been on BGA. And in fact, I think many people would say popularized in some respects by BGA, and that's Seasons. I bring this up for a couple reasons. One, I absolutely love Seasons.
He does.
2, BGA is a fantastic place to play Seasons because it keeps track of so many of the things that you would normally have to keep track of in terms of like, I played this card, and then other people might have something that triggers when you play that or whatever. It asks all the players at the table, hey, this happened. Do you want to take your thing? And so that is really, really helpful so that people aren't having to like rewind at the table like you would normally do in a game like that. Also, the last thing is the cool thing about BGA, and they didn't used to do this, but I've just recently noticed I played Seasons and it looks completely different than it did even a few months ago on BGA. They overhauled it completely with a lot more graphics.
That's cool.
And I've noticed that as BGA has sort of blossomed in the last year, they're taking a bit more time to make them a little bit more user-friendly looking than they used to. Not that they used to look bad or anything like that, but there's a lot more graphics going on with the Seasons display now. And I've noticed that with a couple other games as well.
Yeah, I have noticed that with some games.
It's cool to see that they're like not resting on their laurels. Or like, I mean, Seasons been on there forever.
Yeah.
And the fact that like they revved that up or whoever revved that up, I'm not exactly sure how it works. I know they have like people who contribute and like volunteers and stuff like that. But whoever did that to Seasons, I thank you because it's a really gorgeous looking game on the table. And whatever you can do to make it look that much better on BGA, I'm all for it.
You have sincere thanks from David Waybright, whoever you are.
That's worth it, I'm
sure.
And I
would say, too, that like I need to play Seasons again because I played it a while ago on my phone and it was not really doable because I couldn't read the card text. So I was just like randomly pressing cards and being like, I don't know, it's letting me do this. But on the computer, it was fine. So I wonder now that they've redone it, if it's now more mobile friendly, because I love that game. It's just, I usually play on my phone, so I like ones that I can easily play on my phone.
And that might be, the whole mobile scene might be factoring into how they're revving those things, because obviously more and more people are playing on their mobile devices.
Which is like, my last one is also an older one that I like playing on my mobile. I played it actually quite a bit after my last surgery, because it's very easy to play one-handed on your phone. And that is a classic, Ticket to Ride. So
that is a classic. I wasn't even sure that was on there.
It is. It is on there. And so, yes, I love the faster games. I love the quicker stuff on BGA. But I was sitting there and I was like, all I have to do is sit here and rest, which is hard for an Emily who doesn't want to sit still. But I was like, I want to play something with a little more game to it that I already know how to play. And I was like, oh, Ticket to Ride, that's a real game. Like I can play that. And thankfully, though, I can also play it on mobile because it's very simple to just click which cards you're trying to do, click which routes you're trying to get to.
Sure.
And so it ends up being pretty quick on BGA. Like, I feel like when you're in person, you're probably like chatting more and doing more stuff. But on BGA, you end up just like, oh, wow, this is actually a pretty decent game to get through really quickly, where I'm just like taking these trains, putting down these tracks. The one thing I will say that was hard was I wasn't sure. It's harder to read the tone of the game with strangers, right? So I felt a little bit bad when I would like block off the routes because I was like, I don't know if we were planning on playing mean, but you obviously needed that 2 point and I just took it. So
Or are you playing with random people too?
I was with random people.
So if you've ever played on BGA and lost Ticket to Ride to Emily, just know that she beat you one-handed. Like she was doing it on her phone. She was probably doing other things at the same time. That's how good she is. But those are 6 games that we think you should be at least trying. Get on BGA and check them out. There's also tons of other games to check out on there as well. If you have any questions about any of these games or any of the other games on BGA, let us know in the comments below. We'd be happy to get down there and talk to you about it. Until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table.
Or the arena.
See you then. Or the arena. Absolutely. Let's change it. We'll re-record it. Anyway, bye-bye.